She said, has it occurred to you that maybe it's not your job to fix him?
Wow.
No. I said, no, it's never occurred to me that it's not my job. I'm just like, I'm his mother. I said, no one's ever going to love him like I do. And she said, what if what you need to do is just accept the fact that he might stay like he is today, like right where he functions at that day, and that's just going to be who Tanner is, and that's going to be where he stays, and that it's going to be okay, and that you will find meaning and he will find meaning and he will find purpose, even if not one thing ever changes again. She said, can you ever get peaceful with that? And if I'm honest, I'll say in that moment, the answer was no. I said, I don't think I can. I want more for him. I want his life to be bigger. I want him to experience things. I don't want him to suffer in any way. And she goes, I'm not, she said, he won't. She said, just love him where he is today.
I'm Jackie Hall, and this is Beneath Behaviour, where we break down stress, reactions, and get to the heart of why we all do the things we do. We'll have real conversations, find real solutions, and have absolutely no judgment. Let's talk. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Beneath Behaviour podcast, where we're always looking underneath our thoughts, feelings and behaviours to make sense of why we do what we do and why our kids do what we do. So on today's episode, I am really, really excited to welcome a very special guest. It is Tanner's mum, Nicci, from the show Love on the Spectrum. So if you don't know what that is, because you might have been living underneath a rock, Love on the Spectrum is a brand new Netflix. Well, it's not even brand new, is it? It's like 3 years on, but for all of a sudden it's just exploded and everyone knows what Love on the Spectrum is. It's a dating show for autistic adults, giving them an opportunity to meet new people, learn dating skills, and hopefully meet a potential love partner. And so one of the characters on Love on the Spectrum, Tanner, who is just the most beautiful soul, has just captured the hearts of everyone. And so I am thrilled to have the opportunity to speak to Tanner's mum. Nicci, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Jackie. I'm so glad to be here.
Now, one of the reasons why I wanted to get you on the show is because when we've watched Tanner, you've just got such a beautiful heart and a beautiful relationship with him, and you can really see why he is the delightful soul that he is, because the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And, seeing you on the show, you just so connected with him. And I just wanted to say, when I first saw Tanner in episode 2, I'm not episode 2, so season 2, he first aired. He was saying that his purpose in life was to bring joy to the world. And I remember sitting on the couch with this massive smile on my face looking at him, because his smile is infectious, right?
It is.
And
He has a big
when he
smile.
said that, I remember thinking, oh, yes, you are. And I think what people are connecting so much with is just the pure heart and the pure joy that he is, with no agendas. And it's what we all aspire to be. You must be so proud of the man that he's
Oh
become.
gosh. Oh, it's been mind-boggling. I don't really know a better word to watch the evolution and the progression and the development that he's experienced over his lifetime, and certainly since he went to college and then post grad on, and with the addition of the show, it's just been unbelievable. He's achieved things and had opportunities and had experiences that we never would have thought that he'd be able to participate in. And not only has he done it, he's done it well and impacted literally millions of people while he's been doing it. And what I love about Tanner's story and his, I guess you could say, his reach to his audience is, Tanner doesn't know how to be anybody other than who he is. There's no manipulation in his heart. There's no judgment in his heart. He's really raw. I think raw is a good word.
Mm-hmm.
And he's very, he just is who he is. He has no filter. He says what he thinks, and he genuinely cares about people. Mm-hmm. And it's just such a lovely, refreshing way to be.
And has he always been like that? Has that always been who he is?
He's always been very loving. He's always been very loving. Tanner always had language, which was a huge blessing. Now his language acquisition slowed down, and he definitely has a communication disorder. I want to make that very clear, but he never lost his words. Like he could always speak. when he was a little boy, he was always extremely attached to the family, very loving with siblings and parents. But he was real quiet. People laugh when I say this. He was super quiet for a lot of years. And I think it was the auditory processing until he gained enough skills and enough self-confidence to be able to express himself and maybe like have the receptive skills to then be expressive. That took a long time. But when it hit, whoop, out it came. He got there, we
He
started
found his
talking.
voice. Yeah, that's so
And
good.
it's so funny, we always laugh. Like this is our child that has, a disability that is associated with social things. And he's the most social person that I know. Like literally loves people, never meets a stranger, so social. So
Yeah.
it's interesting. There's so many, paradoxes in it. So
Yeah. And it's such a journey, isn't it? Like I run an autism program. We've worked with over 4,000 parents, and when they say it's a spectrum, it is such a spectrum. And it's
spectrum.
it's hard to get people who don't understand to see that, because
Yeah.
sometimes they're exposed to a certain way that autism presents and
Yeah.
thinks that's it. But I've not, like, over 4,000 families that I've worked with, I've not seen one child that's similar to
Nope.
another. And so
Either.
that's why I created Beneath Behaviour, because it's like understanding what must this child be thinking, but also
Yeah.
for the parents. And this is why I wanted to get you onto the show today. What's going on for the parents? What are they thinking? What are they feeling? How are they
Mm-hmm.
behaving in the way of approaching their child and approaching their own life in amongst all
Yeah.
some of the challenges? Because, it's easy for people to see, Tanner now and think
Yes.
like you've had it easy, but it
Right.
hasn't been
Go
all
ahead,
rainbows
quickly.
and
Yeah.
unicorns, right? So are you able to kind of take us back to the beginning of your journey and how you were kind of feeling at the beginning when you started to notice that Tanner was different?
Definitely. Yeah, that is such a good point, that people see the product of 20 plus years of really hard work. And, and also the support that he's had and the teachers and therapists and doctors that he had. It's all the culmination of all those things together, what you're seeing today. When he got diagnosed at 4 years old and we started seeing signs and symptoms at 2.5, I would never in a million years have imagined that he would ever leave my home, that he would ever live independently. Certainly not that he would go to a university and live there for 4 years, away, 3 hours away from me. So, I mean, I want to throw that out there for just to give hope to parents, no matter where your starting block is. It will blow your mind what will happen over the course of 10 years and then 20 years. Because we really are, he's 26 and we started seeing things at 2. So, between 2 and 3. So we're talking about, it has been a 20 plus year journey that we've been on. But when he first started showing signs, and, I think for the young parents of today who have little small children, I feel like we're almost in a different world. It was literally a different world in 2001 because of technology. We didn't have, there were no podcasts like this to listen to. I mean, I'm listening to you and I'm thinking, oh, parents today are so lucky. They have all this knowledge. They have all these resources. They have all these amazing people to go to. And I'm not saying we didn't meet amazing people. We did. But you just had to get on the phone. You had to drive everywhere. There was no Google. There was no, finding things on the internet. And I remember just feeling a very not fun mix of panic and denial and a lot of fear and extreme loneliness. I just felt so alone. Tanner was the only child, like in our rural South Carolina community, that he was one of 2 that had the diagnosis of autism at that time. The other child that was, and I didn't know this family very well, I knew of them. His mother was lovely to me, called me on the phone and said, here's my best tips for you. I would do this. I wouldn't do that. This is worth your time. This is not, I'll never be able to repay her for that. Because at that time I couldn't go into a chat room or go onto this website or listen to this podcast or, follow this page on Instagram to get information. It was just people. And the only association I had with autism was the movie Rain Man, which I don't even know if a lot of people on this podcast will know what movie
We're
that
starting
was.
to date ourselves. I was thinking
Yeah.
about that the other day and thinking, for the younger generations, it's probably going to be, because I had a mum actually say to me the other day that her son was, what's that guy's name of, I can't remember that show now. Oh, it's left my mind. But there's more recent shows that her
Yeah,
son was
yeah,
being
they won't
compared to.
associate that, but like for people of our generation, it was Rain Man, and that
Yeah.
autism was just not a word that you heard. And
Yeah.
I just remember feeling, because I felt like there was so little known about autism. It was such a mysterious, kind of obscure thing. Nobody could really define it for me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, all I was hearing was early intervention is absolutely paramount. Get on it, get on it. Basically, all the experts were telling me in so many words, you're not a good mom if you don't start right away. Like, let's go, let's hit him now while he's young. And it's like, with what? I don't know what you're talking about. I've never heard of this disorder. I thought he was a perfectly healthy little boy. I had no idea that anything, that he needed anything. And so there was this weird sense of being paralyzed and panicked at the same
Yeah.
time. Like,
Yeah.
I need to flip into motion, and I also feel paralyzed.
Yeah.
And what I really wanted was some time to just go in my room and cry for
Yeah.
about a week
Yeah.
and process the fact that his life was not going to progress down the path
Yeah.
like that
Yeah.
I thought it was going to progress down. And that for me was like a 10 to 15 year journey,
Yeah.
letting go of that, because I don't think we realize as parents, and it's nothing you do intentionally. You don't sit down one day and say, I think my child's going to be this way and I'm going, but you unconsciously have these
Yeah.
visions, you unconsciously have these hopes and dreams that you just sort of assume their path will probably go because of where you geographically live, who you know, where they go to school.
Yeah.
Think they will follow this pattern. And then when it becomes apparent that not only will they not follow that pattern, but they are actually going down a much harder road, to get to wherever they're going to go in life, that's a lot to swallow as a
Yeah,
mom. And
absolutely. And I think I'm hearing like there's so many emotions that you've just described
oh,
then that I
it
know
was
our
hard.
parents are feeling that panic, that feeling of fear.
Mm-hmm.
When we, in our autism program, we spend the first couple of weeks working on the parent and their mental health
I
and
love that.
helping them to
Love that.
understand their own emotions. And one of the tools that we use is what we call the stressful thinking lenses, which is the four lenses that we look through that make up the narrative that underlies all
Mm-hmm.
stress. So everyone who's feeling emotional stress goes through these lenses. And the lenses I describe in detail in episode 2 for anyone who's interested. But basically, it's right versus wrong, missing out, could have, should have, and worth less. So,
Mm-hmm.
in a nutshell, we always, and you just spoke about it then, we have this vision of how our life is going to go. A lot of the
Yep.
times it's unconscious. A lot of the time it comes from our own upbringing, what we do
Right.
want to repeat or what we don't want to repeat.
Right.
So we have this vision of, life going to plan, and we can get attached to that vision. So when life doesn't go to plan, we all of a sudden think that life is going wrong, or if our child's life isn't
Yep.
reaching these expectations, their life is going wrong. And when we notice something's different from our expectations, we then can go into that missing out lens of I'm missing out on the experiences I'm supposed to have for my right path. And I should have done differently, or I should be doing more. And if I'm not getting life right and I am missing out and I'm not doing all the things that I'm supposed to do, then that means something about me or my life, that I am worthless. Or sometimes I feel like my child's life is worth less because of what they're experiencing. And so that panic that you were talking
Yeah.
about before is that whole I'm panicking because I'm trying to figure out what have I got to do in order to get life
Yep.
back on this
Back
right
on track.
path. Yeah. And then the fear is that I'm fearful that my child is going to miss out on these
Yeah.
experiences in order to have this right path. So, how do you relate to kind of that narrative that was going on for you?
I've never heard someone articulate it as well as you just did. I love the four lenses. That's amazing. Like that puts it into such a great mental picture, because that is exactly how you feel.
Yeah.
All those things are happening simultaneously. At the same time, you're grieving. You're grieving the diagnosis, and you're
Yeah.
grieving the loss, and there's an element of shock. You kind of want someone to take care of you. You know what I mean? I was at the
Yeah.
time that all this happened. I had Tanner when I was 26. I mean, I have children in their 20s now, and I look at them and I'm like, oh my God, I was younger than them when I was handling all of that, and had not, we'd been married 7 years at that point. I think, a fairly new marriage. It's just, it's so much. It's so much. So any parent that is there, that is in that initial panic, loss, shock, grief mode, the first thing I would say is give yourself a minute. And I love it that you just said the first thing you do is address the parents.
Yeah.
That's genius. I don't know that I've ever talked to anybody who says that first.
Yeah.
You might be the first person I've ever heard say that. That's the best thing you could ever do.
Yeah.
Because, and I think that approach will save a lot of marriages.
Yeah.
Because Mark and I, obviously the divorce rate in autism families is, what is it, 80%? I mean, like, it's high.
Yeah.
And I remember Mark and I, we're both very motivated, very achievement oriented, productivity oriented people. We're a good working team. And we basically just sort of like instinctively knew, all right, this is going to be huge. We had 2 other children. We were getting ready to do an intensive therapy program. That's going to be me. That's going to be Nicci. But someone's got to provide for that. And someone's going to have to work really hard, and we're not going to be 2 income anymore. So Mark took the reins on the financial part and basically had 2 careers going and was driving that. But we're very blessed. We made it. We stayed together. We made it. We're still together, happily together. But that's not always the story. And I love that you're starting from the place of, as much personal stability. And then hopefully, if there's 2 parents involved, on the couple's stability. I mean, I think that's the best, like, it's the best gift you can give any child.
Yeah, I think, like if you, like you're probably quite aware, like I don't know whether this is present in Tanner, but a lot of autistic kids are very sensitive to other
Yes.
people's energies.
Oh,
And
yeah. Oh, yeah.
I see so often that when parents are able to give themselves a minute and to reconcile with that narrative. And of course, we teach upgrades as well. I think that's episode 5, but we also teach it in our programs as well. That when they're able to upgrade that narrative and see things from a wider perspective and relax into, when I say surrender, I want to say that sensitively, because everything that I say when I talk about lenses and upgrades always sounds so easy, but it isn't in practice, right? And so when parents are able to change that perspective and look at things from a different way and feel a different way and not feel that sense of panic and fear, not only are they more able to jump into the world of the child and really see what's going on underneath their behavior in order to be able to support them, but the child tends to change as well. The child tends to relax into things because they often are feeding off the parents. So it makes sense to work with the parents first.
And I swear, we've never met, just so the audience knows it, but I feel like you are reading my mind, because you just use the word surrender. And that is like one of the themes of what I would say my journey has been, is I didn't know I had anything to surrender, because I didn't realize how much of my parenting perspective, I guess is the best word, was from the path I thought we were supposed to go down, what I envisioned would happen with my children, how I thought things would look. And that was with no ill intent. I adore my children, wanted only the best for them, and was a very devoted mother. But I really didn't realize that I really was not parenting from the perspective of, you are a unique creation. You are not an extension of me. You are a whole new thing. And there's a whole new reason for your existence. And there's a whole new, set of people for you to meet and lessons for you to teach and things for you to learn that has, and I am not the engineer of that plan. Yeah. I listened to one speaker and he was talking about, we are not the engineer of our children's lives. We are their shepherd. Yeah. And I love that. It helped me so much. And I think a lot of it, my upbringing, my personality, last thing, I think that I felt such a sense of obligation to make everything right, to get everything correct.
Yeah.
And I couldn't imagine. And honestly, and I hope I'm not skipping around too much, but I think it's all going to make sense. A lot of that, and I've done so much self-discovery through all this, was coming from just a place of panicked fear. Yeah. I didn't think I was up to it.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that at the time, but deep in my heart, I think I was really thinking, can I do this? I don't know if I can be enough for him. Yeah. I don't know if I can pull him through this. I don't know. I'm too scared. I don't know anything about this disorder. I don't know what to say to these professionals. It is intimidating as a layperson, especially a young mom. I had 3 babies, bam, bam, bam. Very quickly. Tanner's he's number 2 of 4 eventually, but at that time I had 3. And, I've been at home, I've been pregnant, I've been nursing, I've been watching kid shows. I've been entrenched in little kid life, raising my very young family. And then you walk into a room and there's 4 psychologists and 2 OTs and people staring at you and wanting you to have these opinions and answer them. And I'd been kind of out of that mindset for a while. That's intimidating. People don't think about that part of it that happens to parents. But, there, when I finally surrendered, and you're just talking about a child feeding off your energy, I feel like just because of logistics and the dynamics of our family, Tanner has always been unusually tied to me. And that's nothing that Mark did or didn't do. It's just the way it was, because he had to work. And so I was the one that took Tanner to all the appointments. I was the one that oversaw his ABA. I was the one that, oversaw the team of girls that worked with him in our home. So he was just very attached to me, even when he left home at 19, turning 20. And we've always had this just really raw, almost animalistic kind of bond. And I've always said Tanner is like he's my walking, breathing conscience. Because if I am behaving badly, as in like being sharp with everybody, in a bad mood, being impatient, being snide at all, it'll reflect. He'll get, I will see it in him because he is so open and he's such an open book. And he's always been like my guide. I'm like, if I don't act well and treat others well and try to be my best self, neither is he. And it just hit me. I'm like, it is my responsibility as his mother. And I was very convicted at one point about everything that I was internalizing about autism and worrying about it and being frustrated about it and being sad for that. I was focusing so much on what was not happening and what we were losing and the life that wasn't going to happen, not outwardly. I never would have said any of those things. That was all in my heart. But all those things were churning. They were churning in my soul. But he can feel that. And I remember the day that I sort of had the epiphany. He is literally bouncing back to you what you are feeling, whether you're admitting it or saying it on the outside or not. He is bouncing that back to you. And this is your precious, wonderful, amazing son that you adore. What do I want for him? I want him to know how much I love him. I want him to know that I think he's beautiful and perfect regardless. And at that time, nobody else was thinking he was beautiful and perfect. They do now. But but when they're difficult and he had a lot of sensory issues and he was running around rooms and not listening and nobody else was looking at him like you know what I mean? That's a different phase. And I just started really thinking about how my energy and how much I actually smiled at him, the tone of voice that I used, how much I touched him. And, as boys get older, you know what I mean? Like I wasn't picking him up anymore. I wasn't holding him on my hip as he was a early bloomer, got very tall very quickly. And I was so convicted about that at one point. And I made a very conscious decision to relax my face when I was around him, to put my arm around his shoulders when we're talking, like to rub his arm. He needs a lot of pressure. Still, when we speak together, I'll like run my hand up and down his spine or kind of like squeeze his back while he's speaking, and I can feel him. And even just to smile and be silly and laugh more, just because I'm a pretty silly person on my own. And he reflected it. It was like a 360 for him. I mean, all this personality came out of him. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's what he needed. So anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's fine. Like you're talking such great things about self-awareness, and it's so great that you had that epiphany and that ability to kind of look at yourself and kind of reassess, because so many parents and so many mums actually do exactly what you did. Is they assign themselves that role of they assign themselves that role of, I'm the autism person. I'm the one that has to do more, be more, have more, learn more, control more. And when we look at those lenses, a lot of people can go into like that achievement identity, that right path, should have, could have. I just need to do more, be more, have more, learn more, control more. I should be able to control my child's life to go right, and get so absorbed in that doing that they're not being. And to have that awareness to kind of go, hang on, how am I being when I'm with Tanner? I'm just so busy trying to fix it and make it right that I'm not actually accepting what is and looking at what is and looking at how our relationship is. And that's why we work with parents first, is because that self-awareness allows you to come back into the present moment, to come down from that do, and actually go, okay, let's jump into the world of my child and go, how must they be experiencing not only life, but how do they experience me?
Yes, yes, and that is so humbling. It is so humbling. And you just summed it up. You really don't even need me on here. No, yeah.
No, that's not true at all. I think what's really important is that parents are seeing themselves in you because
Yeah,
you have such a great outcome in Tanner. He's a beautiful
yeah,
person. People love him and he's functioning really well in society. And there are parents, obviously, in the early parts of their journey, and that's their biggest fear is what's going to
yeah.
happen to my child? What's
Gonna
their life
happen.
going to be? And they're
Yeah.
legitimate. So these lenses aren't right or wrong. So I just want to make that very
Oh,
clear. It's not
yeah,
about saying that you shouldn't be thinking like this. These are natural reactions. Like grief is the missing out lens. Grief is grieving the life I thought my child would have. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. They're valid feelings. It's important for parents to realize that they are not alone in those feelings. And it's a process of moving through those feelings and getting into that place where you're able to surrender, which doesn't happen right away. So, how did you get there? Like, was it just the
no,
epiphany or was it like a certain event that
honestly,
happened?
yeah, it was actually an event, and I'm really like in shock, like at how well you were like articulating everything that I went through. You really are just telling my story beautifully, but talking about like being so caught up in the doing. And I've actually been misquoted, and I've just on social media stuff, I've seen people take things I said out of context, like, well, she just wanted to fix him, and they put it like as in she didn't care about him, she just wanted a normal child. Nothing could be further from the truth. I remember feeling, I mean, for a decade, like almost a little bit sick all the time because it was so painful to me
Mm.
to think that he was going to have to face these harder things, to think of people teasing him, to think of him being left out. And I mean, I'm like any normal person, if you were really truly faced with that with your real child, you know what I mean? You're not just
Yeah,
like talking about it. That's huge. This is your baby. I mean, he was
absolutely.
my baby. And my
Yeah.
first boy, I didn't have any brothers. It was such a big deal to have a boy. And I remember just thinking, and and back in that time in the early 2000s, there were a lot of things being pushed to be like kind of miracle cures. Like if you did the gluten-free, casein-free diet,
Yeah.
you were going to cure your child.
Yeah.
And people have to remember, like as a new mom, totally unfamiliar with the diagnosis and knowing nothing about it, you're grasping, and
Mhm.
I mean, I was devouring books. I was staying up to 1 in the morning. As the internet got better, I'm staying up till 2, 3 in the morning, researching things and we did everything. We did chiropractic. We did the diet for a while. We did biomedical intervention. We did different supplementation. I took him to Chicago. There was this sound and light therapy clinic. I mean, I did everything. If we could find it and we felt like we could do it, we did it because we were thinking best outcomes. But when after I exhausted myself going down those roads and chasing those hopeful, things that would be the magic answer, I kept thinking, we're going to hit on the one. We're going to find the one. And this person is going to have the thing that's going to hit Tanner's system correctly. And all of a sudden, this typical boy is going to pop out from behind the scenes and all of our hard work is going to pay off. And I think in
Yeah.
my brain, and a lot of that is just the way I'm wired, it was happening. And I was getting myself to the point where I was just exhausted, emotionally exhausted all the time. It was affecting my mothering, it was affecting our marriage, just feeling depleted. And we got to fifth grade and we had a teacher, no shade to her at all, but she basically told us, I don't want him in my class. It was a private school. She had the option to say that. She said, I don't think I can give him what it takes. She said, I don't think I can do that and do the other kids too. And it was, as you can imagine, like an crushing blow,
Heartbreaking.
heartbreaking at that time. And we also at that time, he was at a point where every so often, I don't know if it's like this in Australia, but you have to redo their psych evals and everything. It was time to like update his IQ test and his psychological evaluation and all that stuff. So we had that done. And I was driving home one day and the psychologist called me with the results of his updated psychological evaluation. That's when they were looking for auditory processing disorder. They retested his IQ and all these things. And he called me and was just kind of like reeling off the results. And everything was horrible. I mean, everything on paper looked dismal. I mean, low scores. It definitely showed auditory processing disorder. We were about fifth grade at this time, so we're going to be heading into higher level work, and that was going to mean what will he and will he not be capable of. And I just remember I just fell apart. I'm driving, this is like early days of cell phones, and I'm weeping all the way home. And I remember that poor doctor, he was like, Miss Smith, do you need to pull off the road? I'm really worried about you. You're crying really hard. And he said, are you okay? And I was like, no, I'm not. I said, I don't know what to do. I said, I don't know what else to do. We've been thinking about this. By this time he's like 11. He was 2. I'm like, we've done everything. I said, I've taken him all over the country. I've done everything. He's my whole life. And I apparently am making no progress. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to help him. And I just kept saying, like, what's going to happen to him? So I'll get emotional. Yeah. Like, I just kept thinking, like, what's going to happen to his life? He's 11. And I felt like, have we wasted all this time, all these therapies, all this stuff? What is going on? Why can't we figure it out? And I remember he told me, he was so kind. And he said, you know what, Nicci? He was like, I want you to just stop and take a deep breath. He said, he's come a lot further than you think he has. And he said, I want you to imagine, he said, I'm telling you that he's delayed, but I'm not telling you that he's never going to get there. He said, you just think of him like a plane that's delayed at the airport. He said, it's having to dodge some storms and it's taken the long way. He said, but he's going to land that plane eventually. He said, it's just not going to be on the day that you think it is. And it's not going to be on the time frame that you thought, but eventually that plane's going to land. He said, you need to take a deep breath. Remember, these are just results on paper. He said, this is not necessarily how Tanner presents in person. He said, we got a lot of potential there. You just take a deep breath and let's redo our plan. And it was the kindest, nicest thing he could have said to me. And I came home and I was talking with a dear friend about it, kind of crying again. And she said to me, this all happened in a day. She said, Nicci, she said, has it occurred to you that maybe it's not your job to fix him?
Wow.
No. I said, no, it's never occurred to me that it's not my job. I'm just like, I'm his mother. I said, no one's ever going to love him like I do. And she said, what if what you need to do is just accept the fact that he might stay like he is today, like right where he functions at that day, and that's just going to be who Tanner is, and that's going to be where he stays, and that it's going to be okay, and that you will find meaning and he will find meaning and he will find purpose, even if not one thing ever changes again. She said, can you ever get peaceful with that? And if I'm honest, I'll say in that moment, the answer was no. I said, I don't think I can. I want more for him. I want his life to be bigger. I want him to experience things. I don't want him to suffer in any way. And she goes, she said, he won't. She said, just love him where he is today. Yeah. And just accept the fact that might just be, you might just have to change your expectations. And I didn't want to listen to her. I really didn't want to listen, but she's a good friend. And I know she really genuinely loves me. And she said the hard thing because she saw me spiraling. Yeah. And after I thought about it for a day or two, that was sort of when I had like the moment of all my doing, all my running, all my trying, it's not pushing the bar that far forward. Yeah. He's making progress little by little by little. We're doing 5 steps forward, 3 steps back, 5 steps forward, 3 steps back. But he was progressing. It wasn't very fast and it wasn't at the rate I wanted, but he was. Yeah. And that was when I started thinking, okay, the only thing I can control is how I react to this. I got to quit trying to control anything else. The only thing, and then I kind of made a list, like, what do I know? Number 1, I know I love my son. Number 2, I know I will always be his biggest supporter. Number 3, I will always be in his corner, no matter what. I want him to be happy. I want him to feel loved, and I want him to have joy. So what do? I can't control his therapy. I can't control his education. I can get him there. I can take him to the right people. I can offer him. But what I can do at home is have more fun with him, is love him, is not worry if we miss a therapy appointment if we're playing in the yard. Think about how my body language is. Think about how I interact with him. Think about what he's feeling from me. And I don't know, I just felt like such a burden was lifted after that day. I just felt like a cloud came off my shoulders when I just started thinking, it's not about me. It's about him. And it's not my life. It's his life. And it's going to play out, and we'll take each phase as it comes. And I got to let go of the fact that I'm going to know what the next phase is. I'm not going to know.
You can
and
even,
that was fun.
yeah, you can even feel the relief. And as you're telling that story, you can just see your whole body just kind of
Yeah.
relax into it.
Yeah.
Like you can really
Yeah.
get that sense of what happened. And like, you are describing, so many parents right now that there's so many things I want to say about what you just said then. First of all, when just going back to what you were saying about people saying that you were trying to fix, you didn't care about him, you were trying to fix him. You were
Oh,
trying to fix the situation so that it was easy for him. It's not that you're
exactly.
trying to fix him. You still have this whole I'm trying to fix it mode, this try to achieve a
Yeah.
mindset, but it's not about changing him. It's about trying to make life easy for him, right?
And it's trying to make it predictable, and it's trying to make it where he won't have pain or go down the harder roads. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Exactly. When
And
people
then,
take it in context, it makes your skin crawl because I'm like,
yeah.
I spent my entire life, you know what I mean, devoted to trying to best outcomes for this child.
Absolutely. And I think the second thing is when the doctor was saying, and I love that you had that doctor because it's such a great viewpoint, it's that those tests are they're measuring against a neurotypical person. And
Yeah.
it's such a narrow-minded thing to say that somebody has to develop at a certain pace just
Right.
because the majority of children do that. It doesn't mean that it's wrong if he's not at that pace. So I love that he
Yeah.
was able to kind of give you that widened back perspective to say he's just on a different journey to
Yep.
a lot of other kids, and that doesn't make it wrong. And that's that right path that we're talking about, is that we unconsciously, because we've been conditioned by society, think that children need to travel along this trajectory. But and I love the autism community for this, that they are pushing the norms and they're helping people to see that there
Yeah.
is no normal
There
way
is.
of growing and having a life and experiencing things. And I just love that you kind of had that, and you're seeing that surrender side of things isn't about doing nothing. It's about surrendering to outcome,
Yes.
surrendering to the right path and going, we're here, and I'm going to still do more, be more, have more, learn more, and try to
Right.
control the situation to make things easy.
Yeah.
But I'm going to let go of the outcome. I'll do as much as I can for as long as I can, and then let go. When I get to a dead end and it's not
That's
not changing things,
Yep,
I got to surrender to that.
that's exactly it. It does not mean that you stop researching or that you stop, looking for the next best teacher, the next best school setting. And for us, we had to find a high school setting then, and then we found Clemson Life, and then, we found employment after that. But it was being able to do all of that with more peace and joy. I
Yeah.
think that's where the surrender and the heart part comes in. And also genuinely, and it really honestly, like autism just did so. I mean, our family laughs. There's six of us. We're like, who would we even be without Tanner? We feel like he has defined our entire family. Like,
Yeah.
because we always think, God, I think we may, can I cuss? Like, I'm like, we might be assholes.
No, not at
Like,
all.
maybe we wouldn't be very nice people. I don't know. Because I mean, like, I feel like he has just brought out the best in every one of us in a
Yeah.
in a different way. He has made Mark and I realize like how much resiliency we have and how much we really do love our children. And he's humbled us a lot and made us realize that our way is not always the best way and that there's always more you can learn. And I can't say enough about my other three children. And I don't say that in any way to sound braggy, but they're amazing. I mean, they are the nicest, most compassionate, kind, and they really are open to everyone. And they're always kind of looking for the underdog. They're always looking for somebody who's left out. They're always looking for the person that might need help. And because they have literally lived it their whole life, they are defenders of the weak. They are champions of, the ones who are struggling. And I've never seen any of them deliberately be mean. You know what I mean? Like, and it is amazing what having a special sibling will do for the other.
And it was interesting. I watched one of your podcasts with the siblings, with your
Yes.
other children, and it's something that I wanted to ask you about because I know a lot of parents put this amount of pressure on themselves as well to
Yeah.
get it right, and the having to combine that with other children and having to be everything to everyone. One
Yes.
of the things that stood out to me with yourself, but also I know you're doing the podcast with Lise Connor's
Release.
mum,
Yes.
and it
Yes.
was the same thing. You guys had assumptions about how well you were doing or how well you weren't doing and thinking, like, we often fall into this lens of I'm ruining my kid's life, I'm not doing enough, or I'm
Yep.
messing up in some way. And they did not have that impression at all. Like
At
their
all.
experience was very different to the lenses that you had on it, the narrative you were telling.
What we thought, and we were, Lisa and I, in that pod. Sorry, I have to
You're right.
fix this. Right. We were absolutely just blown away with our other children's reactions and responses. We neither one expected. We came into it like wide open, like we don't know what we're gonna get. You know what I mean?
So
Like we might
just before you tell me what they did say, or tell the audience what they did say, tell me what you thought what were the things that you thought you had done wrong with either Tanner? Because I know Tanner's like you, I remember you talking to him about in another episode where you spoke to him and you were talking about one of his experiences with his teachers in his room and his siblings
yeah.
being out in the playground, and you were clearly thinking that he was missing out in the missing out lens, and
Yeah.
he was like, oh no, I did not feel that at all. So what
Right.
were some of
Yeah.
the things, the assumptions you'd made about either your parenting or the experiences your kids were having that surprised you that they were not feeling that way at all?
I felt like, it's particularly with my oldest, because she's older than Tanner. And she kind of she's always been an old soul. When she was 3, people thought she was 7. When she was 7, people thought she was 12. I mean, she's always been smart. She's always been verbal. She was sort of like the other parent in the house, always. She just was like an adult, so young. And I have so many regrets about how impatient I was with her. I think I put way too much pressure on her, not meaning to, but because I instinctively kind of knew she was capable, like that she could handle it, but I kind of forgot she's a kid, and she doesn't need to be parenting Tanner. She doesn't need to always be in the leadership role. Sometimes she just needs to be one of the kids. And I know that when I was younger, I don't really feel like I'm this way as much now. I was way too much of a yeller, like would get rattled and we'd all be rushing off and everybody's got to have, their gear and their towel and their, we're going to swim practice and softball practice and baseball and we're going everywhere. And then Tanner has to get to therapy and I'm trying to keep him regulated and I'm trying to get everybody in the car with other things, yelling at them, rushing them, come on, come on, come on, making them feel like they were a burden, almost because I'm trying to handle your brother. I'm trying, but it was so funny. I don't feel like they internalize that much of it. I think I would lay awake in bed at night and feel like, oh, somebody got the short end of the stick today. And it was a different one every day. And, I think Lise used this analogy one time. She was like, I've only got one pie. I'm one person, and some days she would say Connor took 75% of that pie. And like the other 3 of you had to split 25%. But on that note, I think I was expecting a lot more, maybe like residual bitterness or feelings of being slighted.
Mm-hmm.
And they took it more like, no, I'm a better person because I had to realize that mom and dad couldn't do everything, that mom and dad were just people too. And they all talked about like realizing that everybody's going through life for the first time, like when it hit them. And I think it hit them younger than it does most kids. You know what I mean? Realize, man, my mom and dad didn't know what to do either. My younger daughter, Madeline, the one everybody calls Midge, she said that long ago. She was like, oh my gosh, mom, you were like my age when all this was starting to happen. She was like, you were the age I am now. I was like, yeah, I was. And she was like, I don't know anything. I said, neither did I. Neither did I, but I was pretending to be a mom in her life. I was just doing it. But, it was just such a beautiful thing to me to see these young adults talking about how the fierce compassion and love and protectiveness they have for their special sibling and how they were all collectively said, I wouldn't change a thing. I wouldn't change him if I could. I wouldn't, have him be different, even if I could wave a magic wand and have it happen because I love him like he is.
Mm-hmm.
And he's brought so much in my life. He's made me a better person. It was truly like really a pivotal episode for both Lisa and myself. We were like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because the thing is that by design, the brain's always going to look for what's wrong or what's happened that's bad in the past so that we don't repeat it again. And so I think, and I know this personally from going through anger management stuff, that's literally why the Parental Stress Center exists, is from my own anger management stuff. So, and it comes from a lot that I can so resonate with your achiever identity that it's always about do more, be more, have more, learn more, control more. And if that doesn't happen, you feel that panic or you feel that out of control anxiety, and that comes in a way, express itself in a way of anger, right? And so when you have been like a yelly parent or a we've got to get this right kind of panicky kind of parent that needs to have it all ducks in a row to feel good about themselves, you have reference points that that's all you did. But very often with parents, there were so many great things you did that was the buffer for the crappy things that you might have done,
Like,
that
not right.
because you're only looking at this small lot of crappy stuff, you're not seeing all of the good stuff. So if you were to look back now over those years, can you see a lot of love and connection and good times in that
Oh,
that
oh yeah.
has gone into producing the kids that you have today?
I would say, oh, for sure. And I mean, I feel like the six of us, we are a tight unit. We are a tight unit. And there's just sort of like this shared, like unspoken knowledge that nobody else really gets it, but we lived it and we were a team and we all pitched in together. And I do think things we did really well. We always talked to our other children about the autism, about the special needs sibling, about our family dynamics like adults. We always spoke to them like, okay, this is our life. This is the way it is. Life is not always fair. We told them that from the get go. We were like, life is not fair. Some people have higher support needs than others. Your brother has higher support needs than you do. It does not mean we love you any less or that you are any less special, but there will be times when it will feel like he's getting more.
Yeah.
And it's still, he's 26. It often feels like he's getting more because we have to help him regulate. We have to make sure he adjusts to a situation. We have to make sure that he understands what he's to do or whatever. But I think them feeling some sense of ownership and being educated and like going ahead and talking about it, like laying it out on the table. Like, this is the way our life is. This is the hand we are dealt. Now, how are we as a family going to play it well?
Yeah.
Like, are we going to let it beat us? And we also had a very high level of expectation for behavior for all four of them. And if we tried to do it with a very wide margin, we always tried to be like, listen, here is what we expect from you behavior wise. I feel like proactive parenting is really important. Your children need to know what you expect from them. They want to know. If they
Absolutely.
don't know what you expect, how do they know how to act? And
Yeah.
so we always try to communicate, and with Tanner too. Tanner's not exempt from that to the degree to which we knew he understood. Now, of course, he may have been at a different developmental point, but if we felt like, no, he can grasp this concept, we said, this is what we expect from you, an A, B, C, D situation. This is how we expect you to behave. And like things like grades and things like extracurriculars and how they responded to coaches and their jobs around the house and how they react or how they interact with their grandparents. This is the expectation. This is how our family does things. This is how you are expected to be. And honestly, I think we had a very, I think our kids felt very safe in our household. They knew who they were. They knew what was expected of them. And another thing we did that I felt like we did pretty well, we both, when we knew we'd screwed up, we apologized.
Yeah.
And we would say to them, you know what? I know today sucked. I know today was rough, man. And I would say, I had a bad day. I sat in a therapy appointment that went 2 extra hours and we had to fill out forms. And then I got in an hour and a half worth of traffic and I came home and nobody had been fed. When they got older, I mean, obviously I wasn't telling that to 4-year-olds, but and like kind of let them see the realities of life.
Yeah.
And I think that really matured them really young too, just bringing them into like, this is a team effort. We're a unit. We are a 6-person unit and we're all going to support him and we're all going to do what we can do to make this situation the best. And I think having siblings, like for Tanner, I mean, they brought so much life and light into his life. Not that it's bad to not have siblings. It's not, but for him particularly, and they provided him just all this natural socialization. I mean, their friends were in and out of the house. They were fun. They did things with him, and they really contributed a lot to his, fun, effervescent personality that he has now.
I think one of the things that stands out for me in how you've been raising your whole family or, being the backbone of your whole family is what often happens with young kids is when they're going through tough situations like that in families where the mum or the parents are unavailable sometimes because other things just genuinely have to be the priority. Young children personalize that. and they
Yeah.
think everything is about them or
Yeah.
everything is their fault. And one of the key things that stands out from what you've said is that the reality is this is what's happening in our family. This is how our family is. And sometimes it's going to be tough, and sometimes my attention is going to be here, but it doesn't mean we love you any less.
Yes.
And so those words are so important to help the child depersonalize what's happening in the family. And then when things, but that sounds like it was a continual message in many different
Yeah.
ways,
And
because you
I,
were also saying when there were tough days, you would go back and you would repair that relationship. And that's so important, which is why you've got that. That's a buffer as well. And I think a lot of parents don't realize that. They only see all the bad stuff they've done, but the good stuff is that repair. It's not having life go in this perfect
yeah.
straight line, right?
And I think it's really good for your kids to see you as a human. And, another thing we did too, and this was really hard for me as a mother, because I always wanted everybody together. I wanted Tanner with us. I did not want to ever like exclude him. But as the kids went on and we had another child, we have Maverick and my other son, I started to realize that Tanner wasn't enjoying a lot of the things they were enjoying.
Mm-hmm.
And it was just the point of us all being together, like taking him to certain athletic events, taking him, to certain movies that were loud or had lots of bright lights and stuff that the other kids wanted to go see. And I started to get okay with the fact that we are, and this is not everyone's situation. I realize that we're very blessed that Mark's parents live very near. And I had a few, my sister's not far away and she was really good with Tanner. And we have had a few babysitters that were just wonderful. They understood him. I felt very comfortable with them. I had no doubts that they could handle him just fine and would be really, make it an enriching experience. But we kind of got okay with at times separating the family, like letting Tanner not go. And but that was hard. I cried about it for a long time. Like, I don't want to go to the game and where's Tanner? But then I started to realize Tanner's not having fun.
Yeah.
But two or three really want to go. And I think if people listen back to our podcast with Tanner Connor, we asked them, did you feel bad? They're like, no, I wanted to be left alone. Are
Yeah. I
you kidding
remember
me?
Connor saying that, like his siblings felt bad because he was sitting in the, at
Yeah,
lunchtime
he's
at
like,
school
leave
by
me
himself.
alone.
And he's like, yeah, no, that was great. I was happy with that. Yeah. So our assumptions, again, it's that attachment to this right path, this
Yeah,
idea that we have of how it's supposed to be, that the family's supposed to do things together, and then going, actually, this doesn't work for our family. I mean, a
right.
last podcast I did, there was a mum that was raising 4 neurodivergent teenagers, and she
Oh,
was saying she had to surrender to the reality that she's like, we're not like other families, and it doesn't make sense to try and be like other families because that's not us.
it's really like, it's so hard because, especially when I'm very social. I have a lot of girlfriends. I'm very involved in the community. It's hard when you're a social person and you like being part of things. And then you have this child that has a very limited ability to deal with, novel situations or new things. Now, it's not a problem anymore because Tanner can handle almost
Yeah.
anything
So it's
now.
not a
But
problem
for years,
yet. Yeah.
yeah, but for
It was,
years it was, and there comes the left out piece, and that's hard, and you grieve that, and then the separating the family piece. It's a hard thing to see that it really isn't a tragedy.
Mhm.
It's just not what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And then he got older, as things went on and on and on. We were able to include him. Now he can go to concerts just fine. But when he tells you he's ready to go, you need to go. Like,
Yeah.
like he can go to a loud concert and he can handle being right by the speakers, but I can sort of see the curtain fall when like his sensory system has had enough, and he knows how to advocate for himself now. He'll look at me and say, Mom, I'm really getting tired. I need to go. And I don't argue. I'm like, I'm like, okay, out the door.
Yeah.
Let's go. Need to
And
leave.
what age did he start to do that?
Later in his teenage years, honestly, everybody who does not have a child in puberty yet, brace yourself.
Yeah, right.
Woo! Puberty with an autistic child, puberty is difficult. Anybody, anytime. Yeah. But you throw autism in the mix and is a whole different story. At least it was for us. It was really turbulent. I felt like it was sort of a regression period. However, the bright side, I always want to talk about the bright side, post-puberty, when everything planed out, I felt like the progression then, I felt like we were almost on a steady upward trajectory. Like once he got through that hormonal upheaval that is the period of puberty, I felt like then he just took off like a rocket. And like things really since then, like 17, when boys are kind of done, it's just been a steady. He's gotten better and better and better and better, and every year I feel like he matures a little more because, he is 26, but he's not 26 in every way. and I feel like we're still doing some teenage things, like in the way he relates, sometimes attitude,
Yeah.
sometimes things like that, but people don't ever see. No one sees that. Everyone's like, no, Tanner's never mean. I'm like, oh,
No,
I'm
he's
like,
he's
oh
the
yeah.
perfect one.
Everybody's like, he's perfect. I'm like, oh, come on, you want him for a weekend?
So I know that a lot of parents like who have thrown themselves into being the, the one that finds all the solutions and puts all the
Yeah.
things in place, that can almost become part of your identity, that
Yes.
this is who I am. Like you said, I'm the autism mum. I'm the one that kind of takes control of all of this. And then, so I was speaking to a mum on my podcast about her child's independence, and I wanted to make this point. It wasn't her, but for some parents, it becomes so much part of your identity that it can actually, and I don't think it was you either, but for some parents, it can actually impact how much you help your child to progress on their own or to scaffold them so that they are becoming independent at certain things because you take on this identity that I have to do it for you, or it's become such a part of my life that if they do start to become independent anyway, regardless of what you do,
Mhm.
that there can be a part of you that kind of feels like, well, who am I without that role? Did you ever go through that?
Again, you're weirdly reading my mind. Like, seriously, did I ever? That was almost like I always joke and say, I'm the best thing that ever happened to Tanner. However, leaving me and going to Clemson Life was the best thing that ever happened to him.
Mhm.
Like, I mean, and honestly to me too, because I was exactly that. I was literally, feeling like the earth for him would not turn if I wasn't checking behind, making sure that we had filled out this form and that he was dressed in the right clothes and that, he had shaved and he had done that, you know what I mean? Like, although he was doing the things for himself, I was always checking behind him,
Yep.
which was stopping him from taking that next step to being responsible for it himself. So when he went to Clemson Life, they were the first entity we had ever worked with that literally said, Mom, go home. And like the kindest thing they ever could have done. They literally said, we don't need you. Now you go. You
And
go
how
home.
did that feel?
I literally felt like I was going into shock. The first few days I was home, I didn't teach my classes. I didn't go to the gym. I kind of wandered around my house. I felt like somebody had taken my arm. And I felt like I was kind of sick. I felt like kind of exhausted and a little bit, I just felt weird. I didn't feel right without him here. I was, even though they certainly, I mean, it's not like they take him off to prison. I mean, you can call, but they're very strict, even with the amount of phone calling. And it is all part of the plan. I mean, they are trying to break that dependence, not the connection, but the dependence, which
Yeah,
is two different things. And
absolutely.
they're very strict about how much you can call in the first few days. You can call every day, but it's at a controlled time, and it's for an amount of time. And, they really work on the child problem solving and thinking through. And okay, did you brush your teeth? I don't know. Did you brush your teeth? You know what I mean? And I was just, even though I felt like I pushed Tanner more than anyone and that I held him to the fire more than anyone, there's just certain things as a mom that he's still your baby. He's still your little boy, even when he's home now. And he's so sweet. He's very easy to do for because he's so sweet. And he appreciates everything. He's a fun person to cook for. He's a fun person to be, because he's like, oh, Mom, this is so good. It's the best thing I've ever had. And he just said that yesterday, but he says it again.
But he genuinely means it, right? It's not like he's repeating it because it's what you want.
Exactly.
He feels
No,
that
in
way.
the moment, the best thing he ever had. But it was, yes, that is such a thing. And it is so, that's why I am so excited that there are more and more programs like Clemson Life popping up all over the country and hopefully other countries, and
Well,
everywhere
I've
else.
not heard of anything like that in Australia, so I hope it
Maybe you're
comes
going to
to
be the one to
Australia.
start. You might need to be the one to start it.
Yeah, and if there's any viewers in Australia that know differently, please put it in the comments
Yes,
because I've not
do.
heard of it, and I've worked with so many parents, and no one's saying, "Hey, there's these opportunities
Oh,
for young
it,
adults."
it was life changing. And then, the way Clemson Life is set up, it's a 4-year program. The first 2 years are all about independent living, basically learning to manage your home, to navigate public transportation, to place an online grocery order or shop in person, to clean your apartment, to iron, to do laundry, to use your debit card. That's what you do the first 2 years. And then the
Wow.
second 2 years is job training. So they're assuming at the end of the first 2 years that you can get yourself up, get yourself dressed, maintain a clean apartment, do your laundry, go to the store and make a simple transaction, prepare a simple meal. All those things should be learned at the end of 2 years. And then the second 2 years, you're doing internships and you're actually doing on the job training, very, very scaffolded, starting with the job coach, and then they slowly take the support back until by your senior year, like the last semester, you're going to work, you're taking an Uber, you're showing up at work with no job coach, you're doing your thing. And then they help channel you into the interview process for the real world.
Yeah.
That's what Clemson life is.
And it's so scaffolded. And, I feel like that's really what's missing in the autism support is the scaffolding to be able to say, this is where this child is at. This is what they can do. This is what they can't do. This is what they can do with assistance, and building on what they can do with assistance and scaffolding it in the way that we gradually then back off. And I think that there's not enough personalized support in helping the child to do that.
Oh, for sure. For sure. And I just, and it was just the teachers. It's an extremely hands-on program. It's an extremely, but it's still not your mom. You know what I mean? Like, it's not mom, and like they have ILAs, which stands for independent living assistant, that live in the dorms. And those are just typical college students. They're usually either education or psych or communication majors. And it's a paid position, and they're on duty from like 6 p.m. at night till 6 a.m. the next morning. The staff has them busy all day.
Yeah.
But the ILAs are in on the weekend. So they're basically like a big brother kind of presence there. But, a 23-year-old boy is not going to do for you, or a 21-year-old boy, what your mama is. You know what I mean? So, but it's enough to make sure you're safe. It's enough to make sure you're hitting your checklist. It's enough to make sure you're getting it done. But they're not doing it for you. You know what I mean? And and they don't want to do it for you, which is the best thing that could have ever happened to Tanner. I mean, the leaps and bounds, and we had pretty high expectations of him. I mean, he made his bed, he helped with laundry, he unloaded the dishwasher, he took garbage off, he did all those things at home. But just the critical thinking, and even like understanding the concept of like elapsed time, and like how long until, and understanding like the concept of a calendar, like this week, this is what I'm doing. Those were things that he did not, he couldn't even conceptualize at all before. And they teach them all of that.
Yeah, because mom was there to do it for him, right?
And I was telling him, okay, wake up today. This is your schedule. Now he would go get himself dressed and show up and do, but I was still running the show. It really puts them in the position to run their own show, which is just amazing. And now he's literally living up there running his own show.
Yeah. So. And I think for parents, it's difficult to have that balance between when do I push and when do I not, and it's really having that awareness of their capacity to be able to be pushed and where their nervous system is at when you push. Do they actually have the resources to be pushed, and do they have the nervous system regulation to be pushed outside of that? And I think, because we love our kids so much that sometimes if we see a slight nervous system dysregulation, you've got all these reference points of what that could mean or where that could go to. And so you may not push as hard as somebody who doesn't have those reference points, so it's such a balancing act, right?
That's a fine line. Oh, for sure. And like that, the teachers and someone and like kind of like fresh perspective on your child, someone looking at them with a new eye, that at the end had that. And of course they love them, but it isn't the same kind of emotional, tied up connection. It was just so helpful.
But I think also, I know coming from that professional point of view, that having worked with so many parents and so many families and so much of the spectrum, I can see possibilities and potentials and pathways that from that vantage point of seeing so many lives, that you've seen Tanner's life and where he's been and where you want him to go, and all of those things are tied up in that. But an external professional can often see what he can absolutely be capable of and can push him, and what he needs to get to that point, because they've had so much experience with so many different people and have been part of getting them there. And I guess it just comes from that. It takes a village, right? It's just finding that village. And I know for some people that isn't always readily available.
Yeah.
Thankfully, there is the internet now that there can be more options, but there still needs to be more, right? There's still very
Oh, so
lacking.
much more. And that is so true. Just like the things that, Mark and we would get pictures. My older daughter was at Clemson at the time when Tanner was in the beginning of the program, and we had a lot of friends, children up there. We would get pictures of him out independently on campus or attending this event. And I would show Mark and I'd be like, oh my God, I don't even know how he got dressed today. And look what he's doing. Like he's actually doing this. And he was doing it beautifully. He was just fine. But I would never have thought that he could do it. But they assumed he could do it. They like presume competence,
Yes.
like thought he could do it.
Yeah.
And pushed him to do it. And they honestly kind of didn't give him a choice. They just said, go, here's your thing. And he did.
And I want to kind of highlight there too, because I know that there'll be some parents out there who are thinking, well, I just didn't do a good enough job. But it's got nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
It's just got to do with a different person saying a different thing at a different time, that we're all participating in this person's growth, just like everybody's participating in everybody's growth. They are just doing it differently. And I think it's such an important point. Even if you're doing something and you feel like it's not helping, and someone else is doing something that is helping, sometimes it's having that self-awareness to go, this isn't personal. This isn't because I'm useless or hopeless or worthless. Maybe that person is just legitimately doing something that you're not. And it's just looking at it and going, let's try to get curious about what that other person is doing and seeing if I can replicate it and it makes a difference. And then sometimes it's just because it's not you, because they're so emotionally tied to you like you are to them, that it can just be the emotional dynamic. So I just wanted to point that out to viewers.
Oh, yeah. And I think, too, a piece of that whole, and I know everyone's situation is different. Not all children are going to be able to leave the home. But, for the ones that are, that do have the capacity to leave and go to a secondary education program or leave the home and work or go to a day program or, some type of employment, you don't know until it happens to you how unbelievably far reaching the effects of your affected person going out and having their own life are, like what it did for the other kids, and the way it even made them see Tanner, like to go see him go to college and make friends and have a life. And then and for a few years, he was not here, but the two younger ones were. And it just happened to coincide with like 8th grade year, which are big pivotal years. And it was kind of so nice for them. You know what I mean? Not that they never resented him be here, but for just a minute, there was not a special needs sibling in the house. He was perfectly happy and perfectly contented and taken care of at Clemson. And here they were able to have a little bit of time to just have it be all about them.
Yeah.
It is you don't even know. It's kind of like when you're pregnant and you don't really know how bad you feel until the baby comes out. And then you're like, oh my gosh, I was so bogged down, and then you walk around like, oh, this is what my body used to feel like. When your person can go and achieve a level of independence and have that life of their own to some degree, the weight that is lifted. And, talking about that at the same time, one thing I'm really passionate about, and Lisa and I really want to bring a light to on our podcast, is the families whose kids, have the higher support needs and are not going to make those changes. I feel such a burden right now. It really bothers me that, I don't know how to put this, like, we've had so much opportunity. We've been so blessed, as have all the members that have been on all the cast members, and they're all wonderful and deserving. I think Tanner's deserving. They're all amazing people. But I just want to make sure that families whose kids maybe are not verbal or are not going to be able to get out of the house on their own, they're always going to have to be accompanied or assisted, that they get to talk. You know what I mean? And that they, I don't know. I just feel like I hope that as a community, we can find ways to spotlight those families and let them say their piece and realize that they need support.
Absolutely.
And I know people know that, but do you know what I mean? I really hope people know it a little more.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Because it's a whole other level
it's a whole
of,
other thing.
it's a whole other level of surrender.
It is.
Knowing that you are going to be that sole carer, it's a whole other level of worry, not knowing what will happen after you pass. There's so many added, amplified emotions that are going on. Yeah.
I always think about that, like when I talk about Tanner, and I just want to make sure that those people that are in that situation know that, like, we realize how blessed we are, and we understand that other people are walking a harder path.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to do everything I can to, like, advocate for them. And even if they just need to be able to say what they need or what their thoughts are. Because I know when you're in a situation where you're caregiving 24/7, you don't have time to do a podcast. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to, you know what I mean? It's just such a world that I feel like, and I am not by any stretch of imagination wanting to take away from anybody who's currently, having a moment, like, and I'm my own son being one of them. But, I just want to make sure that, like, the opportunities are spread more equally.
Yeah,
You
I
know,
hear you.
now is
We've
that, is
just
that,
recently we've just recently started to have a separate Zoom call as part of the program for parents who are raising non-speaking children, because it
yeah,
is a different level of support that is
it
needed,
is,
and so
it is.
so isolating that it's so empowering for other parents of non-speaking children to be able to come
Yep.
together and talk and be on the same page and share all of those feelings and those
Really
emotions, and also
understand.
strategies as well, and support. So it's been like we've only had one of them so far. I'm about to have another one in a couple of weeks, but it was so good that those parents were like, yes, let's keep doing this, because we really want to connect with other parents who are like us. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's just one thing that, as this year rolls on, and I hope that we can, like, somehow, I don't know, I haven't quite figured it out yet, to be honest, but just be like a support system, a
Yeah.
sounding board, a way for them to get their needs and, just even their thoughts out, like,
Yeah.
and let people what it's like, so people can be more compassionate and understand, like, what they actually face on the day to day. I've made friends with a couple of younger moms of younger children that are non-speaking, and I'm just in awe of them. I mean, I'm in awe of them. I mean, like, what they are accomplishing and doing for their children is just unbelievable. And the level of sacrifice and commitment that it takes to do what they're doing
Yeah.
is beyond anything I ever did,
Yeah.
And I felt like my load was heavy for a while. And it was, I mean, it was, but it didn't even compare, to them. So there's always, I don't know, there's always that balancing act, of, like,
Yeah. Everybody's having those different
everybody, and
experiences.
that's why
Yeah.
it's so important. I just hope that, like, people will be, you've heard one person's story with autism, you've heard one story,
Yeah.
and somebody else's is totally different, and everyone,
Absolutely.
give everybody grace
Yeah.
and understand that everybody needs support and needs to be listened to.
Yeah, and I love that passion in you. Like, I share that passion with you as well. If you reflect back, from this vantage point of your life now, what do you feel like was the best thing that you did that influenced Tanner being the man that is today? Let's celebrate you as the mum that you were. What are you really proud of yourself for?
I think I think never giving up. Honestly, like, I think we always believed that he could have a full and successful, and we just had sort of like a relentless drive that we were not going to quit until he achieved his best potential. And we just always kept raising the bar. He kept hitting it. And we kept thinking, it took a while, but he would hit it. And we'd be like, okay, I think we do a little more. And he would hit it. Okay, I think we can do a little more. And some of that's personality. And I think too, just, we've always been able to laugh at it. We've kept a good bit of humor in it. Like, and we're silly. We're a silly family. And people can probably tell that on TikTok and Instagram. We're a goofy family. We like to laugh. And honestly, I think the fact that we kind of kept it lighthearted and sort of celebrated him, especially and it's gotten easier as he's gotten older and older and older. And I think that shaped the way our other children saw it too, not making it so heavy, or not always making it so deep. Like, we always laugh. We're like, this is our guy. This is Tank. We call him Tank. He's a little different, but he's ours and we like him. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like,
And again, that is a really important buffer.
yeah, it is. It is. It keeps it lighter. But I really think just the fact that we never, and that, we stayed together, the six of us, we all worked really, really well as a team. I think there was some really good teamwork in this household. And that includes all three of the other children too. I mean, my husband has been a rock star provider. He has been there. He has been there through every hard moment. And then just the fact that my other kids were so unselfish, and they really were. And I don't feel like we really taught that. I don't know, that we were just really blessed. They were so unselfish and loving and supportive with him.
I think you modeled it.
Well, thank you. I don't, I really don't ever remember they've gotten mad at Tanner. Certainly they've snapped back at him like in a tense way, but I've never seen one of them pick on him ever. I've never seen one of them like, single him out. You know what I mean? Like, or make fun of him or ignore him or deny him in public or anything like that, or act like, oh, I don't know that guy. They've always, in fact, pushed him to the front. And even when he's had all this success and now he's the one that's getting all the glory and the attention, and they have very generously and open-heartedly and they, not only are they happy for him, they're celebrating him, they're pushing him forward, and so thrilled that he's having this little moment in time for however long it lasts. And that's been really beautiful to see. That's been really great.
And I love how you've just gone straight from, I said, what have you done? And you answered the question with what we've done and then moved into what the kids did, which is great that you're celebrating them. But let's celebrate Nicci. What's Nicci done that is just you're really proud of yourself for throughout all of this journey so far?
That's hard, because
I can tell.
Collective, like a collective standpoint. I think I just really, really, really loved him. Like, I mean, like I can't even, it's hard for me to even put into words how much I love him and how proud I am of him. And he's, I don't know, like I said, like he's like a reflection to me. And like, I'm a person of faith, and this may not resonate with everybody, but to me, he's like the walking, talking representation that God has a plan for your life, whatever divine being you believe in. It doesn't have to be what I believe in, but that like we are all created uniquely for divine purpose. And like my own inner transformation of realizing that we're all supposed to be finding that. Like, what were you put on this earth to be? And I was not there when this started, but I think I've come a really long way. And I think I am a better, more patient, more well-rounded, broader thinking person because of what I've learned, being humbled, changing perspective, being willing to learn and listen. So I think I've done a ton of self-development that probably I would not have done if he had just followed the typical path, and become, I hope, a much better person, because of the things that he has taught me and that he brought into my life.
I love that.
And continues to. And, we look at it like we're very realistic. I mean, Love on the Spectrum has given him this tremendous platform, but I mean, it's a reality show. It's a dating show. It's not a long-term thing. this is not going to last forever. He's not going to be there forever. No, none of them are, so we're always thinking in terms of, how are we going to, continue to use this, but also be fine with it when it fades, you know what I mean? Like, and trying to like do transition in a healthy way. And like celebrate this season, but also remember that this is a season we need to be in it and enjoy it and have a great time with it, but be okay with it as it, like.
And hopefully for you, it's like this launching pad into being able to get into that next phase of your life where you are inspiring people and parents and like pursuing that passion that you clearly have that's so needed, because I can tell you that that lived experience and that ability to connect with parents, knowing what they're feeling and having felt it yourself is so, so valuable that they can see that they're not alone, for sure.
Help to me was just sometimes, another mom doesn't even have to get it. But just hearing, she doesn't even have to be in your same shoes, but even just letting you dump, on her, what you're going through is the best thing you can ever do. And just know, that their marriage has felt the same stressors. They're worried about the same things with their other kids. It's unbelievable what that does.
So what would you say, just wrapping it up, what would you say to a parent who maybe is at those earlier stages? What is one thing you would want them to know?
Anything is possible. Your mind just might be blown. Don't ever, ever, ever give up. Even if you have to adjust expectations, even if outcome is not what you thought, you might not get the outcome you thought. Like, I was picturing football, college, get married, either come back to the farm with his dad or have a career, have children, da, 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 da. I didn't think that Tanner would be inspiring millions of people to look for secondary education programs and to think about employment for the disabled community, but he is. And, it isn't the outcome that I ever thought of, dreamed of, anything, but it's amazing. And it's also made me like very comfortable with, not everybody has to get married. It's okay. You know what I mean? Not everybody has to be a parent. It's okay. Maybe that's not, maybe he will. I don't know. I never put anything past him now, but just anything is possible. You never, ever know. Just don't give up, keep pushing, and be nice to yourself in the process,
Oh,
because
I
it's a
absolutely love that.
road.
Yeah, I love that. Look, Nicci, thank you so much for being on
Oh
the
my gosh, it
show.
was so nice to meet you. You're amazing. Like, you're so cool.
Thank you.
You really
Well,
love I want to know more about like you need to, people need to come listen to you. I mean, I can think of young moms that have the 4 level. That is amazing. The way you put that together and put that in a, a digestible way. I mean, that is awesome. Loved it.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So where can people find you? So tell us all about your podcast and where people
Yes,
can find you.
we would love people to listen and subscribe to the podcast. Everybody, this podcast too. We are Talk to Me Sis. You can find us on Apple, Spotify, YouTube. It is Lee Smith and I. We are not related. We just both happen to marry Smiths. She is Connor Tomlinson's mother, and she has an amazing backstory. And we are really committed to, like we said, we are right now doing a series with all the Love on the Spectrum moms. So people really want to know all the cast member stories. But then we are going to branch off, and we plan to do a whole series of higher support needs moms. We're going to bring on a bunch of moms whose kids, we want to bring on more dads. We've already done our own siblings and dads. And we have some really cool guests coming up this summer, which I'll leave for surprises, but they are in the autism world, but not necessarily parents.
Yeah.
But they are impacting the autism world. Really cool people. And then as time goes along, we'd like to maybe divert off a little bit. We want to talk about, midlife. We want to talk about fitness. We want to talk about nutrition. We want to talk about, and one thing I'm really passionate about too is like the health, the physical side of autism. Like, we're working really hard with Tanner right now. Kind of had to let that go for a while during the college years when he was so entrenched. But right now we're working with a functional health nurse practitioner and really working on his supplementation program and trying to get his diet better and doing a lot of things to help him with anxiety. And I think that's a topic that is there's so much we can all learn, and there's so much that probably can be done. So I'm on Instagram, Nicci Smith 6. I'm on TikTok, Nicci Tanner's mom. And you can always find Tanner with the _tism. He's everywhere.
And we will make sure that we put all those links in the description as well, so people can find you. So thanks again, Nicci. Appreciate you being on the show.
God. So nice to meet you. Thank you for the opportunity, Jackie.
Very often parents feel overwhelmed by the challenges of parenting an autistic child. And if this is you, the Parental Stress Centre's 9-week Autism Parental Stress Relief Program is here to help. You'll learn practical strategies to reduce stress, how to change how you think about those different challenges, and how to support your child, all while being part of a community of people that gets you. And the best part is you get lifetime access to these resources. So head on over to Parental Stress Centre today to find out more.